Can the next president really lower your grocery prices? A fiery Chicago mayor as he directs a complete overhaul of his school board.
The power doesn't have to be flexed. The power just is.
And celebrities playing a big role this year in politics. But does it make a difference? Thanks for joining us. This is The Brief. I'm Marianne Ahern. The phrase, "It's the economy, stupid," it was famously coined by political strategist James Carville during Bill Clinton's campaign back in 1992. And it appears it is still true 32 years later. You told us what's driving your vote: cost of living, gas, groceries, and childcare. But before we get to that, let's start with 3 key takeaways for this week.
Lies and misinformation. He spends full time talking.
Kamala Harris launched a media blitz this week, appearing on several popular shows in New York.
Name calling and demeaning people.
From The View to Howard Stern.
Madam Vice President, thanks so much.
The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and also
What do you make of that?
the Caller Daddy podcast. Harris, who has been criticized for not participating in enough interviews, also sat down with CBS News 60 Minutes.
It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
Donald Trump declined an interview with 60 Minutes and accused CBS of editing the interview to make Harris look better. Takeaway number 2, the former president hit Pennsylvania hard this week, the Keystone State considered one of the most important in this race. Trump returned to Butler, where the first assassination attempt happened, Reading, and Scranton, the hometown of President Joe Biden.
If we win Pennsylvania, we win the whole thing. It's very simple. And your taxes will come down and your safety will go up.
Former President Barack Obama headed to Pittsburgh to stump for the Harris-Walz camp this week. Our final takeaway, in November, for the first time, Chicagoans will elect 10 members to the school board. Mayor Brandon Johnson will still appoint 11 members, meaning he will have a majority. By 2027, it will be a fully elected board.
What's being carried out right now is my authority as mayor of the city of Chicago.
Playing a big role in these elections is whether candidates support the mayor, his plans to fire the CPS CEO Pedro Martinez, and how to fill the multi-million-dollar CPS budget hole. A big sticking point is Martinez's contract. It calls for a 6-month notice.
I love this job. I want to stay in this job as long as possible. I'm never against somebody wanting a change in leadership for the right reasons, but my contract is really clear.
Celebrities, whether they're rock stars or movie stars, they're people with power. They're often using their influence for political campaigns. And this year, it was George Clooney's July op-ed in the New York Times that was key to the dominoes falling for President Biden, completely changing the presidential race. But let's look at whether endorsements really do make a difference.
I am Seraphim. Can human skin truly be this moisturized?
From beauty to beverages.
A Corona and palm trees.
Celebrities have been promoting products for more than a century.
The Pope, back in the day, endorsed an alcoholic beverage, a mixture of like Coca-Cola and wine together. One of the first sort of celebrity endorsements that we see.
Barack Obama! Barack Obama!
Political endorsements also have a rich history, but the big question, do these figures affect election outcomes?
You see sort of smart academics say, well, endorsements don't matter, they're not a big deal. And then you see experts and people in political campaigns for whom time is their most valuable resource, spending so much effort to get these endorsements. So you had this puzzle, well, if they don't work, why are all these people trying to get them?
Craig Garthwaite, a professor of strategy at Northwestern University, got the opportunity to answer that after the 2008 primary when Oprah Winfrey endorsed Barack Obama. His research found Winfrey's endorsement led to about 1 million additional votes, ultimately helping Obama win the primary against Hillary Clinton. People may not remember just how popular Winfrey was at that time.
My favorite thing.
Her favorite things list demonstrates her ability to sway her fans' purchasing decisions.
She is, at the time, and probably till today, a celebrity of unparalleled influence in the market.
Until now. In the 24 hours after Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris in September, nearly 406,000 people clicked on her link to vote.gov to find out where to register to vote.
If you look at the popularity of Taylor Swift globally now, she's probably the closest thing we have to someone that has the reach of Oprah Winfrey. If you look at things like her album sales, her tickets for her concerts.
To Elon Musk, who gave us, he is a great guy. He gave me the strongest endorsement.
Take over, Elon. Just take over.
Donald Trump has gotten endorsements of his own, including Elon Musk, who can control what information voters see on X.
Trumpomania!
And there's Hulk Hogan.
But celebrities definitely have to weigh this question of, do I want to get involved in controversial matters that will affect my popularity?
Air Jordan and Air Jordan.
Better eat your Wheaties.
Look no further than Michael Jordan to see the downsides to endorsing. Number 23 famously once said, "Republicans buy sneakers too," when asked to endorse a Democrat in a North Carolina Senate race. And then there's the chicks, who faced backlash for speaking out against George Bush in 2004. Taylor Swift has cited that tale as a reason she did not get involved in politics prior to 2018. Now a national poll from Quinnipiac University finds 9% say her endorsement makes them more enthusiastic about Harris's candidacy, and 13% say it makes them less enthusiastic.
In this case, it's not hard to imagine, given Taylor Swift's roots in country music and Tennessee and things along that, that there will be a lot of people who are fans of hers who are also supporters of President Trump.
This is not an apples to oranges comparison to Oprah because she was out on the campaign trail stumping for Obama, unlike Swift. And that was during a primary. So, will the pop star affect the 2024 general election? Garth Waite's verdict? Yes. It's likely, but not in the way you may think.
There you could have a really big impact, if not on moving people from President Trump to Vice President Harris, certainly on getting people to show up to vote for Vice President Harris.
By the way, Taylor Swift, a Pennsylvania native, Hulk Hogan, born in Georgia, two key swing states. All right, next, people blame the Biden administration for their high grocery bills. But what is the truth? And two candidates, two different visions for the economy. The economy is a big talking point on the campaign trail. Democrats, they're playing some catch-up. Kamala Harris is focusing her message on what she will do and is pitching herself to middle-class families. Donald Trump making the case that he'll undo the last 4 years. So let's dive into their policies. It's become a cornerstone of Donald Trump's campaign.
We're going to try and get rid of a lot of that big lump of inflation that this administration has given us.
Trump has been talking about the prices at the pump and the grocery store under the Biden administration. Federal data shows in 2022 inflation was the highest it had been in the country since the early 80s. But it has been steadily decreasing ever since, now at the lowest since February 2021.
It strengthens our economy to do things like pay attention to affordable child care, affordable home health care, and extending the child tax credit.
On the campaign trail, Kamala Harris focuses more on what she calls an opportunity economy. Her plan, a $6,000 child tax credit, a $50,000 tax deduction to start up a small business, and $25,000 to first-time home buyers.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald
During the
Trump's
debate,
plan
Harris claimed her opponent's plan would explode the deficit.
16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession.
Trump's economic proposals rely on tariffs. At a town hall in Michigan last month, he vowed to impose a 200% tariff on cars made by Chinese automakers in Mexico.
Jim, I'm telling you right now, I'm putting a 200% tariff on, which means they're unsellable. Unsellable in the United States.
Harris counters consumers will end up paying the cost of that tariff. The former president, though, touts low gas prices and mortgage rates during his time in the White House. Going forward, he says large tax cuts for workers are one of his top priorities, while Harris wants to roll back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy and enact a billionaire minimum tax. When it comes to workers who receive tips, both candidates have called for no taxes on those tips. The basics: eggs, bread, meat, you name it. The prices have gone up and down at the grocery store and when you go out to dinner. Inflation has cooled, but your bills are likely higher than they were pre-pandemic. So what's the disconnect? Grocery prices are up more than 25% since 2019, according to multiple federal sources, driven by the fallout from COVID-19 and supply changes, the war in Ukraine, and animal disease like the bird flu.
People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
And despite promises we've seen on the campaign trail,
address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries.
Professors at the University of Illinois Department of Agricultural and Consumer Economics are providing a word of caution.
I think it is important that consumers understand that we're not going back to 2019 food prices. That's not happening.
So can politicians, walk into office, flip a switch and lower food prices? No, that's just not reality. It's going to be a complex, long, difficult process of addressing a variety of issues.
Together, Maria Calderon-Denekis and Jonathan Koppes conducted surveys to gauge perceptions of inflation, an issue that's top of mind for voters.
The economy is pretty important to me. The cost of living and being able to provide for myself, my family.
Their research shows consumers strongly believe politicians can lower food prices. And digging even deeper, consumers who prefer Donald Trump strongly believe only Republicans can accomplish that, while those who prefer Kamala Harris strongly believe only Democrats can lower food prices.
One of the things that's fascinating about these findings that Maria just was going through is that just how much it reflects our polarized political environment. So,
adding to that, inflation hits rural areas harder than urban, in large part because of transportation costs.
You think the food system itself and the long supply chains from the farmer all the way to the grocery store or the restaurant, there are a lot of players in those food chains now that have their own factors going into it.
Now, as we get closer to Election Day, no magic wand will be waved to lower prices. But one thing politicians can do is improve affordability, especially for those feeling the most crunch.
How many hours are you working to afford that same grocery bill? What proportion of your income is that grocery bill? That's a bigger picture of affordability. And it also doesn't just include food, right? Then it includes things like housing and daycare and other issues that are sort of central to voters right now.
And candidates on the campaign trail do focus on different economic priorities that consumers should pay attention to.
Depending on how tariffs are implemented or what products they hit, it's going to have a major impact on your costs. Going after issues like, profiteering and price gouging, do those, how is that going to impact what a company is going to charge, or how those supply chain challenges get put into the grocery bill?
So one of the top federal agencies focused on the economy is the Federal Trade Commission. We spoke with Chairwoman Lena Khan alongside Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy about their concerns. Khan is the youngest chair ever. She's making a big name for herself, fighting illegal monopolies and taking a tough stand on mergers.
We've been working hard to use all of the tools that Congress gave us to make sure that our markets are competitive and fair and honest. Fair competition has been such a critical ingredient in America's success, in innovation, in prices being low. But we've seen that as markets have been allowed to become more consolidated, that means businesses don't have to compete as hard for your dollar.
Food prices have gone up. Unfortunately, I think, and I think Lena Khan has done a lot of work in this area. A lot of this is because of consolidation within the retail grocery industry, where you have just a handful of companies basically owning the vast majority of the market share.
As we review mergers, as we look at whether companies are engaging in anti-competitive tactics, we want to make sure that there's actually competition in the marketplace. And unfortunately, through our work, we've seen in areas like food and agriculture, in areas like healthcare, in oil and gas, unfortunately, we haven't always seen that competition.
Khan is traveling the country, in this case meeting in the Chicago suburbs with pharmacists and other workers impacted by the push to consolidate companies.
How many of you are concerned about high prices of healthcare or drugs? Some people have two hands on that.
Are you concerned that 2025 will be even as tough economically as it has been for people right now?
Well, look, inflation is coming down. And for a whole set of products in the grocery store, be it cereal or pasta, products actually cost less today than they did a year ago. And so we are seeing those inflation numbers come down, in part because of the great work that the Biden-Harris administration has been doing. But of course, there's more work to be done.
One person in the grocery industry kind of said the quiet part out loud. He said, you know, inflation is actually a good thing in the grocery business because people, once you say, oh, my costs have gone up, I'm going to pass along a price increase to you, that somehow explains away why they, inflated the prices by 20% when their costs went up by a lot lower than 20%.
The FTC has a lawsuit right now against Amazon alleging that their practices have not just made it harder for small businesses to stay afloat, including small businesses that are selling through Amazon that now have to pay as high as $1 out of every $2 just to reach customers, but they've actually also inflated prices for consumers. And so this lawsuit is pending, and we're going to keep making sure that there's fair competition in the marketplace.
The big question for Khan, will she keep her job post-election? Next, your retirement. You might not be thinking about it today, but you better start thinking about it, and we'll speak to a financial planner. Joining us now, Bill Geiger with Geiger Wealth, a trained economist and financial planner. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
We want to hear not only what you think, but what your clients are telling you. What about the economy? Is it robust or are there concerns?
There are concerns for my clients for sure. For me as an economist, I believe we're going probably into stagflation. Unemployment is going up, and at the same time inflation is going up. And inflation in the economy is probably the number one concern on my clients' minds as they come into the office.
Stagflation.
Stagflation. Everything. Stagnation and inflation. The economy slowing down and inflation at the same time.
Interest rates, they've started to creep down. Is it enough? Is it enough for people who have been waiting to perhaps refinance, or those first-time buyers to say, I'm in?
Marianne, they're actually heading in the other direction now. They hit their low in August of about 3.5%. As of this morning, it was 4.1%. When the Consumer Price Index came out this morning, inflation was up, and so were interest rates.
You said people are concerned. What are they telling you about the election? Do they see that Harris or Trump, do they believe there's one with a stronger message?
With respect to them, Trump. Yeah, they're so worried about it. When Harris talks about taxes, it sends a chill down everybody's spine. Taxes on unrealized capital gains. You have something, you haven't sold it yet, and they're talking about taxing it.
Explain what that is. So if I had a $200,000 house, and those unrealized, tell me what that means.
Okay, you paid $200,000 for your house. It's now worth $500,000. That's $300,000 of unrealized capital gains. You haven't sold it. It's there. And they're talking about taxing that, which is horrendous. It just scares the heck out of everybody.
What about Trump's proposal to raise tariffs? Everyone, not everyone, but the counter to that is that's going to creep down, domino effect, and we're all going to pay more.
I think it's just going to make American firms more competitive. If your color TV isn't quite as cheap, that's probably okay.
Tell me about people when you vote on your pocketbook. Younger voters have a way different pocketbook than older voters. So are younger voters going to throw caution to the wind, say, whatever, I'm not saving so much today, so I don't care about that capital gains?
You know, I think younger voters, at least in my reading and my conversations, they're really concerned about the cost of housing, about getting their first house. And between interest rates being so high and housing prices going up, they're having a really hard time doing that.
When you say that you believe that Trump is leading in the messaging, what you also hear people who say, I might not like him personally, but
the policy makes more sense to me. That's the follow-on from that. Pew Research came out with some statistics just recently. 81% of voters believe that the economy, especially inflation, is the most important thing for them in their lives. And Trump is talking about how bad it is, which everybody feels. Kamala Harris is let's tax them more. I'm sorry, my biases are coming out here. I shouldn't be doing that.
Well, I think we need to hear from both sides, and we often don't hear from that side, so we're glad to hear your thoughts. And Bill Geiger with Geiger Wealth, we so appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. My final thoughts, when I asked presidential historian Talmadge Boston why the economy is just such an important part of this race, here's what he said.
From a historical standpoint, voting your pocketbook is almost always the most important issue, and I think it will be this year. I think obviously the Democrats devoted much of their convention to the abortion issue. To many people, abortion is the major issue, but I don't think it begins to compare with the economy and inflation.
Next week, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance are both in the Chicago area. The former president speaks at the Economic Club in the city. His running mate attends a fundraiser in the suburbs. As for the Harris Walls ticket, a big event on Broadway. Anne Hathaway and Whoopi Goldberg will appear at a Broadway rally for Kamala Harris in New York City. And we're still waiting to hear where Harris will be. This is it for The Brief. Thanks for checking in.